bond package that includes a new armory for Bangor and Brewer, an activity center at the Augusta Mental Health Institute, a breakwater at Jonesport, and new sewer construction in Frenchville, Rockport, Lubec, and a number of other small towns. The total bond package will be in the $40 million range, well under the state's investment guideline. To streamline state government, I will propose to centralize and improve our rapidly growing state computer operations and to strengthen the accountability of Maine's professional licensing boards. I will also support management help for Maine farmers, minimum energy standards for new construction, an acid rain control program, better banking services for rural Maine, new group homes for the mentally retarded, more state funding for job training to help women on welfare, and more loans to small businesses through the Finance Authority of Maine. In addition, I will support making Martin Luther King's birthday a state holiday. We can do all of this without a major new tax increase. We can do it by making the state tax code tighter, more logical, and more fair to working Maine men and women. Later in the year, I plan to address the crisis in liability insurance. When the cost of liability insurance or its lack of availability cause a doctor to stop delivering babies, a citizen to refuse to serve on a town board, or a landowner to close a skating pond to neighborhood children, then a system designed to protect has turned into a system that paralyzes. We will work to try to address this problem in the upcoming year. Finally, I want to say a special word to the people of the Sebago Lake area and people of Eastern Maine, who heard last week that their regions are under consideration by the federal government for nuclear waste storage. I want to assure you, and I know I speak for the congressional delegation, and indeed for all of the people of Maine, that we're all in this together. Our expert state geologists have convinced me that the rock formations in Maine are totally unsuitable and unsafe for high-level nuclear waste storage. It isn't safe in Maine. We won't let it happen here, and we will press our case forcefully and aggressively on every front. Yes, there are many challenges we face in the years ahead. As we do, we can draw on our experiences together. For my part, I've grown and changed in the last 7 years. But my basic goals and values that I described in my first inaugural have not changed. I still believe that running a government is more than tending to a cash register. I still believe that a good job is the best road out of poverty. I still believe that government is the last and best hope for many of those in need. Our experience in Augusta has shown that we can stay true to our values, meet basic human needs, improve the quality of life, and still balance our budget. In recent years, Washington has had a different philosophy, a philosophy that huge budget deficits are acceptable. And now, with the Budget Balancing Act called Graham-Rudman, Washington has come up with a new gimmick, one that would have dismayed the founders of this nation. It is called government by automatic pilot. Under Graham-Rudman, the federal budget will be cut drastically in 1986. The cuts will take place automatically according to complex formulas in pre-programmed computers. We in Maine will feel the pain when these cuts imperil our human services, transportation, community development, and our housing efforts. But we won't know where the cuts will happen or how big they'll be until it's too late. This is not government with accountability, as we're used to in Maine. It is government avoiding responsibility in Washington. Indeed, it's the oldest trick in the book. Just how old is it, you ask? Let me tell you how old. It is so old that it is described in one of the first books in human history, Homer's 3,000-year-old epic, The Odyssey. In The Odyssey, the hero Ulysses is captured by an evil one-eyed monster called the Cyclops, and he is held in a cave. Ulysses tells the Cyclops that his name is Nobody. Then he pokes out the Cyclops' eye and flees to a waiting ship. When the neighbors hear the Cyclops howling, they come out of their caves and ask, who hurt him? The dim-witted Cyclops answers, nobody did it, and nobody is getting away. The neighbors scratch their head and they return to their caves. Today, Washington is trying to be clever, just like Ulysses. And when the budget cuts occur and the American people cry out, Washington plans to answer, nobody did it, nobody did it, in the hopes that the American people will just scratch their heads. But the American people are not dim-witted like the Cyclops. They are smart, and I can assure you they will demand accountability and honesty from Washington. I would like to conclude my remarks tonight by mentioning two very special Maine citizens who died in 1985. One was an old man, the other a young girl. One was born in New York City and moved to Blue Hill. The other was born in Holton and raised in Manchester. Both sent important and enduring messages to the world about peace, about understanding, and about beauty. As you know, I'm talking about E.B. White and Samantha Smith. Both were citizens of the world, yet to both, Maine was home. Samantha traveled to the Soviet Union and said upon her return, Maine is a good place to come home to. E.B. White traveled often from New York to Maine. He described his feelings upon crossing the old Portsmouth-Kittery Bridge. What happens to me when I cross the Piscataqua and plunge rapidly into Maine? I cannot describe it. I do not ordinarily see a partridge in a pear tree or 3 French hens, but I do have the sensation of having received the gift from a true love. In Maine, Samantha and E.B. White found nourishment for their values of honesty, simplicity, and caring for other people. All of us in Maine share in those values and share in that vision. We do not all have the talents of a Samantha Smith or an E.B. White, but we do have our special gifts. We all have something to offer our neighbors, our state, and our country. One way we can do this is through public service, but public service takes courage. Serving in the legislature, on a town council, or on a board involves the risk of failure or even ridicule. Maine author Kenneth Roberts, whose 100th birthday we celebrate this year, described people who take risk as explorers. Like those who once sailed the icy waters of Hudson Bay hundreds of years ago, searching for a Northwest Passage from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans. Roberts wrote, "On every side of us are men who hunt perpetually for their personal Northwest Passage, often sacrificing health, strength, and life itself in the search. And who shall say they are not happier for their quest than duller folks who sit at home venturing nothing?" For me, the vision of a just and more prosperous Maine is my Northwest Passage. It is far closer today than it was 7 years ago, but we are not there yet. We need more explorers to continue the quest, to navigate the shifting landmarks, and to seek the golden future that awaits the people of the state of Maine. Thank you very, very much, and good night.
This has been the Governor's State of the State address, live from the State House in Augusta. And now for the Republican response to the State of the State address, we switch to the Governor's Cabinet Room. Here now is Chairman of the Maine Republican Party, Loyal Sewell.
Thank you, John, and good evening. I have with me here tonight two Republican leaders from the legislature, Senator Tom Perkins, who really is from Blue Hill, and the Republican leader in the Senate, and Representative Tom Murphy from Kennebunk, who's the Republican leader in the House. We've just heard, as you have, the governor tell us how he sees the state of the state. And as Republican leaders, we're here to comment on how we see it, its strengths, and its weaknesses. I think we can all agree that things in Maine are pretty good. Some of it's been our doing, but much of it is the results of the programs of President Reagan and his administration in Washington. The president's programs have brought the inflation rate down from 13% to 4%, the interest rates from 23% to 11%, and has cut employment almost in half. This has all affected Maine's economy positively. But now that the primary ills have been brought under control, Congress and the administration is concerning itself with elimination of the deficit and the problems created by that deficit. Their solutions to that will adversely affect the status quo as we know it in Maine and present Maine both with a challenge and an opportunity. How we handle these challenges will set the course for Maine's future. To set the stage, let's take a look, an overview of the spending and the taxing of Governor Brennan during his administration. Tom, do you want to comment on that?
Well, Governor Brennan's predecessor left a $20 million surplus, and while one isn't here to be critical, I've always tried to be helpful with the governor, and in helping him, I'll try to fill in a few cracks that perhaps have been missed by the State of the State address. For fees, for increasing them, the governor spent $1 billion when he started, and now he's doubled that to $2 billion. He used fees in which to raise this. The fees increased from $68 million to $118 million, doubled. Federal dollars have increased from $340 million to $632 million. Federal changes estimated at $1 to $2 million. State government of about 2/3 of $1 billion. Taxes have grown for the family or for the people from $566 a person to almost $1,100, close to double. Maine family of four, a state tax and fee burden is now around $4,256.
That's for every man, woman, and child.
For every man, woman, and child within the state.
You know, and I think as this legislature came together to start talking about what the major issues were going to be, it was very clear that it was money.
and that there were things that remained undone after 7 years or 8 years, and that there hadn't been enough money to address education or address the University of Maine or address corrections. But when you realize that this governor, during his administration, has spent $12.5 billion, it's pretty hard to accept that argument that there wasn't enough money.
Well, another interesting fact that I think Tom mentioned was he was talking about federal dollars, and I believe he said that the federal dollars coming into Maine increased from $340 million to $632 million. Now, we've heard a lot of talk about the administration and Graham Rudman, and if I understood him correctly, the anticipated losses out of the $632 million we received from the federal government, the anticipated losses to Maine would be $1 or $2 million. Is that true?
That falls well within the range, and of course, it is well to stand and criticize what Washington does, but when you are proposing